Timothy Shea is the co-founder of MAGA Institute and the host of the Patriot Uprising TV. How are you, sir? And thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, young man. I turned 58 in a couple weeks, so I got.
Well, you know exactly what I've been talking about.
My children.
Me too. April 17th, I'll be 58.
Well, I'm 29, so yeah, my children
cool.
can hunt, fish, knots, the whole thing. My son was a Life Scout, and they have good skills. You know, my daughter can change a tire, change her own oil. They know what time it is. I've got my K-bar, my fishing gear. It's not hunting season, so we won't be doing any hunting, but push comes to shove, I got my K-bar and my fishing gear, and we're good to go. I live on a lake, so there's no problem there. Let me first thank you for being the voice of reason. I'll give you Timbo's tip number 43. You can always tell when someone served in Facebook military because they call it martial law, M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L, like Marshall Dillon. These people literally have no clue what they're talking about. There is a little bit of a different spin I want to put on the Gateway Pundit article, though. I understand why they went there. Because the mayor of Champaign, Illinois, did ban the sales of firearms and ammunition. I had a friend photograph the shelves in Champaign, Illinois with the sign saying, sorry, because of the coronavirus, we cannot sell ammunition for the time being. And so Mayor of Champaign, Illinois, Mayor of Champaign, Illinois did do it. And Mayor Ray Nagin went door to door in New Orleans and took guns back when Katrina hit. So New Orleans has a little bit of a heightened sensitivity regarding that issue. But you're exactly correct. The mayor did not ban sales of firearms and ammo and isn't taking people's guns the way Mayor Ray Nagin did. But that's why the sensitivity is there. Because look, all the left needs is half an excuse to strip us of our guns. We know that's their number one passion. Why? Because every totalitarian regime in history has first disarmed the citizenry.
Correct. Understand. Tell us a little bit about your background before you were hosting this show, Patriot Uprising TV. Your education and biology, correct?
Yes, and like I put in a post this week. Look, I'm not bragging, but the fact of the matter is, I got A's in cell biology, microbiology, including virology, in genetic engineering and molecular biology and genetics. I know this stuff, okay? And I can read the scientific papers, I can understand them. I'm also a member of Toastmasters International. One of the things that we learn is to give feedback in a sandwich method, okay? You start with positive feedback, then you give your critique, and then you finish up with a positive note. So regarding the president's handling of this whole crisis, I want to first commend him because he got it right the first time. His gut reaction was, this is a media hoax. Okay, and then when he saw it had legs, I sensed that he just stood back and said, okay, you want to make this a crisis? I'll show you I can manage a crisis. And he's also used it to implement the telemedicine program that he wanted to roll out 2 years ago, but he knew that the Democrats wouldn't go for it. But now they're going for it. And also, tomorrow he's going to roll out an executive order that is going to sever our supply chain of pharmaceuticals to China, which has been such an issue that at the Made in America trade show back in Indianapolis in October 2019, they had an entire presentation on how much of a national security issue it is to have our supply chain and pharmaceuticals dependent on Chinese. You can't even get a vitamin C pill without being dependent on the Chinese. And that's going to end as of tomorrow. So I commend him on that. I'm also very, very, very enthusiastically supportive of the job CDC has done, because they have shown that in a brand new virus that has never been seen before, in a matter of a couple months, they can sequence the genome, they can start to make vaccines, and they can start to develop antiviral therapies. All that said, this is like using a flamethrower to kill a mosquito that's on your hand. This is an unbelievably disproportionate response to a relatively mild respiratory virus. And I'm not somebody that makes light of things, right? I was screaming bloody murder in 2009 when Obama did nothing about H1N1, a virus that literally was a lung eater. Okay, it left healthy young people with scarred lungs. I have people right now that are afraid of this virus because of the damage that had been done to their lungs by H1N1. This kind of a response, even though a little too much for H1N1, would have been more appropriate for that virus than for this virus. I keep telling people, I come back to, so what? So what if the number of cases are increasing? So what if the number of diagnosed infections are increasing? This isn't a serious virus. People don't understand the regular flu that we have vaccines for. And by the way, vaccines are only 25 to 45% effective maximum because the strains always mutate. Regular flu, any other upper respiratory virus, is going to have a 13 to 35% mortality rate among whom? Among the elderly, among people with pre-existing respiratory issues, COPD, high blood pressure, etc., among people with compromised immune systems. So if you look at the deaths, they are mostly elderly people. And I'm not saying that their lives are expendable. What I'm saying is they would be just as at risk. These coronavirus deaths could just as easily be influenza B deaths or any respiratory virus death, because they are a highly at-risk population. My parents are among them. My mother's 84 years old. She's got lung cancer. She's very high risk of this. She's no more at risk of this virus than she is of the flu or any of the other respiratory viruses that are going around.
Gotcha. Let me ask you this: why do you think the medical profession right now, like we've reached out to a lot of different hospitals, medical institutes, even the VA, to try and bring on doctors to discuss this? Now, I understand some of them done it with like the bigger organizations. I get that, but it's like they don't want to talk about it or can't talking about it. Is there some kind of gag order? Unless you're on Fox News, you can't discuss coronavirus?
Well, it's funny because I'm friends, and I'm not being rude here. I'm actually scrolling through my friend Dr. Sean Porbin's feed because he has had a couple great posts, and I've posted them this week on my Patriot Uprising page on Facebook. You can find it just by going to @PatriotUprising. You type that into your search in Facebook, but I'll post them in the comments to this show as well, so your viewers can see it. He has a wonderful timeline of the president's response since the virus came out, which completely refutes the lie, the repeated lie, that Trump has done nothing, Trump got caught with his pants down, etc. It's, the Democrats, okay, let me back up. You're 100% correct that all this right-wing fear-mongering is ridiculous. And as far as I'm concerned, the number 17 means one thing and one thing only, St. Patty's Day. So, all this 17 BS is ridiculous. The lie has been repeated so often that he gutted the CDC, etc. Washington Post finally published an opinion piece this week from a guy who was in that job, and he said, he didn't cut my job. He consolidated 3 departments into one to make us more effective. He didn't cut us. He improved our functioning. So they did publish that piece, and I'll give them kudos for that. However, they didn't retract any of the other lies, any of the dozens of articles that they had posted in the previous 2 months. Sean writes today, so he's got that great timeline that I'll post so people have talking points. And he posted today, bottom line, sure, COVID-19 mortality. By the way, COVID-19 is the disease caused by the SARS-CoV coronavirus 2 virus. This is it's like the virus that caused SARS back in China a few years ago, but this one is different and it's much, much milder. But the virus is SARS-CoV-2. The disease is COVID-19, just so people understand the terminology. Sure, COVID-19 mortality in the elder is 14%, okay? Any pneumonia in any year, 13 to 35% fatal in the elderly. So why now are we shutting down civilization for what we've dealt with every single year? That's exactly right. We've had over 23,000 deaths. Over 23,000 deaths from flu this year. Where's the panic been? As of right now, Hillary Clinton still has a higher body count than COVID-19. No joke. Only 99 people have died from COVID-19 in the United States so far. Hillary's in triple figures, man.
That's the best damn thing I've heard all week. And Epstein didn't commit suicide.
Okay, so let me give you a quick primer on the biology of all this so they understand it and so they're able to see through some of the BS, right? A virus is a unique form of life. Typically, you say life exists when you have growth, when an organism can grow, when it consumes food and excretes byproducts, when it can regulate temperature or environment somehow. There are indicia of life, right? A plant will turn to the sun. We all maintain a steady body state, etc. Viri aren't like that. Some viri can live indefinitely because all they are is a piece of genetic material wrapped in a protein coat. That's all a virus is. It's chemical. It's 100% chemical. Now, the protein coat can take different shapes. A bacteriophage, which causes the common cold and some other types or not the common cold, but influenza and some other types of illnesses, looks like a little space capsule with legs on the bottom, okay? And legs on the bottom will attach to a cell, and then that genetic material gets inserted into the cell. Once the material is inside the cell, it hijacks the cell's protein manufacturing plants, the mitochondria, and it has the cell replicating its DNA instead of the cells. So all a virus does is infect a cell, replicate itself many, many, many times over to the point where it kills the cell, and then when that cell dies and bursts, all those thousands or hundreds of thousands of new little virus particles go. That's why you feel like you're coming down with a cold. You feel like you're coming down with the flu. You get an infection, and then there's an incubation period where your body's fighting it off, where the viral load isn't big enough to make you sick. You might start to feel achy and kind of punk and tired, and then the next morning you wake up and whammo, you're sick as a dog because the viral load has reached the point where you've got the full-blown illness, okay? And that's because all a virus's job is to insert its DNA into a healthy cell, use that cell to make copies of itself, and then lather, rinse, repeat. That's all a virus does. The coronavirus is called, it's a class of virus, okay? This isn't the coronavirus. This is a coronavirus. And coronavirus all look the same. Remember those rubber balls, plastic balls that had all the suction cups on the outside? And you could throw it at a window and it would stick?
Yes.
That is exactly what a coronavirus is like. The reason it's called corona is corona crown. It's like when you have an eclipse of the sun, you see the corona of the sun, you see the outside ring. Corona literally from the Latin means crown. So if you look at it end on, it looks like a little crown. There's all spikes, but it's 3D. So there's spikes all over the place, like one of those little suction cup balls. And the genetic material inside is RNA, ribonucleic acid, not DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. The difference is messenger RNA is like, for photographers, it's the negative. And the DNA comes in and you make a positive print off of the negative. Or, for people that like to bake, it's like one of those little cookie trays that you can make snowman cookies, right? And it looks like a snowman, but it's all pushed in. You fill it with batter, and then out pops the snowman, right? But instead of being indented, it's got the little protrusions. So you think of the RNA is the cookie tray, and the DNA is the finished cookie. So this is a piece of RNA. It's one strand, single-stranded. And what it does is it goes into the cell. It has all sorts of copies made of itself, and it kills the cell, and it dies. And that's how this virus works. What are the symptoms? High fever, dry cough. Some people have reported a stuffy or runny nose, but that's not common. Some people have reported body aches and tiredness. That's not common. This virus, all it does is give you a high fever and a dry cough.
What's the high fever? What do we call? What is the temperature? You think range?
I think we've been seeing like 102, 103, even up to 104. It's a high fever. It's not like 100, 101. It's 102 and up, and you'll spike a high fever. But I posted the other day, hi, I've got a high fever and a dry cough. 2019, the doctor responds, you've got a virus, drink plenty of fluids, get plenty of rest, and it'll be gone in a week. 2020's response is, the CDC helicopter, emergency response helicopter, will be there in 5 minutes. Follow every direction the armed men in hazmat suits give you. I mean, it's a complete overreaction. Complete.
Right. Now, if you have a fever, you're going to have the cough together. That's not something like just have a cough, no fever. Chances are you don't have the virus.
Exactly, because these two one doesn't cause the other, but they are present in both. The virus causes both of them simultaneously. The cough doesn't cause the fever, and the fever doesn't cause the cough, but the virus causes both. So if you've got a runny nose, don't worry. You don't need to be tested. And all of this social distancing and take care of the elder. One silver lining is these okay boomer millennials finally seem to care about the elderly, which is nice.
Yeah.
But you want to do that. You want to do that anytime. If you've got an elderly parent, or you've got neighbors that are somehow at risk, or if you've got a family member, somebody in your family has a compromised immune system or lung damage or something like that, you're going to want to do these procedures every year. You're going to want to wash your hands a few times a day, every day anyway. You should be doing it. You shouldn't be picking your nose and your teeth. This is just basic 5-year-old kindergarten hygiene. Okay. Again, we don't need to shut down the planet to deal with this virus.
Hey, this is producer Dustin. I just wanted to throw this in while we have you here, because this is a great discussion on the biology. But I'm watching the chat, and some stuff that keeps coming up. There's a few questions that keep repeating. So, one, can you address this theory that's been floating around now for a few weeks, and it didn't all come from one source. It's been floated by many different people. Is COVID-19 a bioweapon, man-made bioweapon?
Categorically not, and we know this several ways. First of all, if this were a bioweapon, the Three Stooges must have created it, because it doesn't have any of the super nasty parts that you would want in a bioweapon. Okay, this is rather contagious. Once it's all said and done. See, here's the problem with all these numbers. Okay, anytime somebody throws you a number, your response should be, so what? You don't know what the denominator is. Most people who have this virus either have no symptoms, or they have such mild symptoms that they don't even think they're sick. Okay, so we have no idea what the true magnitude, how many people have actually contracted SARS-CoV-2. That number, the bigger it is, the smaller the case fatality rate, the CFR, the smaller the morbidity rate as well. So again, I come down to, so what? This isn't a killer virus. So it didn't have any of the really nasty things you'd want. Like if you were going to design a bioweapon in a lab, you would want this aerosolized, which this is. You would want this highly contagious, which this is. But you would also want it to cause hemorrhagic bleeding, or you would want it to cause, nerve damage, so that people die of asphyxiation, or you'd put something really nasty in there, because a bioweapon's no good unless it incapacitates the enemy. This virus doesn't incapacitate the enemy. So just common sense tells you it's not a bioweapon. But what also tells us it's not a bioweapon is they have sequenced this. Now, is it possible that WHO, CDC, and private labs and the US military are all lying to us? Yes. How likely is it that you could have 1,000 people in a room and say, okay, shh, this is what we're going to do. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Don't tell anyone. How likely is that secret to be kept? Okay, so they've run the genome of the virus. Doug, this is how good they are. It's literally called a fingerprint. They know which downstream cases came from Wuhan, which came from Iran, from people that were in Wuhan, which came from someplace else that had been in Iran, because the virus constantly mutates. And so by continually running the virus and seeing all the mutations, they can literally build a trail of crumbs back, and they can build a tree. It's like the virus started here, and then it branched off, and all these people were infected by somebody that got it from here. All these people got it from somebody that was infected someplace else. I can't express enough how highly sophisticated, and it almost borders on magic. Like, people that don't understand the science, if you looked at it, you'd say, this is magic. I can't believe you can tell this person got sick from the virus that arose in that, and you can trace the pathway back just by looking at the genome. But that's what they can do.
Now, I know you mentioned, people are asking in here, is this more contagious? Do they know? Is it more contagious than, say, the common flu that we're all familiar with?
I think when all is said and done, it's going to be about as contagious. Because, again, they don't know what the true denominator is on this. We do know that we've had over 90 million cases of flu this year. We do know that we have 23,000 dead of flu this year. So far, SARS-CoV-2 isn't as contagious. Now, but here's the problem with this response, okay? So you take the flamethrower to the mosquito. A fly swatter would have worked. Your hand probably would have worked. But the mosquito dies from the flamethrower. And you say, see, the flamethrower worked. You might, you've got a burned stump of a hand, but the flamethrower worked. So what I don't like about this response, and again, it's good to know they can do this level of response this quickly for something that would truly deserve it, like bubonic plague, although the mayor of San Francisco doesn't seem to have a problem with the fact that bubonic plague has actually been found in people in San Francisco living on the street. That's a separate issue. This is the kind of response we need to have. It's great to know that we have the capability, but it's great to know that we have nuclear capability too. Doesn't mean we need to use it for every little border skirmish.
Now, there's just two other things that keep coming up. One is last Tuesday's show, the reported numbers, and again, we use CDC, WHO, and Johns Hopkins because those are the numbers that we assume the president's looking at. Okay, so it was 808 infected reported on last Tuesday's show. Now it's at about 6,400. It looks like the doubling rate. So when it goes from 50 to 100, the doubling rate is about every 2.5 days. Do you think, and we're going to have someone, former DHS emergency management, on Thursday to discuss this in depth, the reaction and the response and what the CDC and the task force has been doing. But do you think, and every state is different, and President Trump has put forward his own directives, do you think these quarantines will help stop that spread so that we can bring that doubling rate, or actually increase the doubling rate out, so it's not just 2.5 days, we get it up to 8 days, 10 days, and then slowly phase this out?
Well, yeah, but again, I come back to, so what? I mean, this isn't something that we need to burn out that quickly, except for political considerations. Biologically, we don't need to. This is going to burn itself out in the next few weeks anyway, because they know. And again, let me just further explain this gene sequencing. If it had been gene edited, there are fingerprints that are left. When you edit genes, you use what are called nucleic acidases, and you snip either endo or exo. You snip from the end or you snip in the middle. Well, when you do that, it's like cutting and pasting a paragraph, okay? You're going to see the tape, as it were. There are no indications at all of any gene splicing in this genome. They do know it doesn't like heat, it doesn't like humidity, and it doesn't like sunlight. Well, guess what? It's already 80 degrees in Houston and in Florida. Okay, spring is here. This virus is going to burn itself out, just like every other virus burns itself out. Again, this response is a political response, not a public health response. Because, and people say, but my Italy. Well, let me tell you about Italy. Italy's population is skewed to people 65 and older. The single #1 largest demographic group in Italy is 80 plus. There are more people in Italy 80 plus than in any other demographic group, because it's the economy is crap, and it has been for a while. All the young people who have any ability at all have left Italy. Also, Italy is a heavily there are heavy smokers in Italy still. Okay, that diminishes lung capacity, which increases your risk. Finally, Italy is the poster child for Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all. The healthcare system there is such crap that it gets completely overwhelmed. I am not worried about our healthcare system becoming overwhelmed. We treated 300,000 people with H1N1. We're not going to be overwhelmed by this virus.
Okay, and then the last one, and I know it's because it keeps coming up, obviously. This is a huge one from across the whole spectrum of the web, in the chat, social media. It's a very touchy subject, and I don't want to put either of you guys on the spot on this, but the next big thing is the vaccine. The vaccine, what are your thoughts, Timothy, from your background in biology, on vaccines in general, and on a vaccine? And we've heard Israel and other places are working on this. Trump was trying to negotiate some deal with Germany on. But what are your thoughts on that? I know it's touchy, and probably half the people are going to hate you no matter what you say. So, but it's something that needs to be discussed.
I don't care whether people love me or hate me. I'm always going to speak the truth. I won't be getting the vaccine. Okay, then there are a number of reasons why. Number one, as we see from influenza, a virus that we know a lot more about than we do about this virus, they're only 25 to 45% maximally effective. Okay, so vaccines can give a false sense of security. It's like wearing a bicycle helmet. All children have to wear bicycle helmets. Well, guess what they don't tell you about that? Most parents buy those stupid bicycle helmets with the aerodynamic points in the back that kids don't need because kids aren't racing on their bikes. Kid falls off the bike, and the helmet's always tipped back on the head. It never fits properly. They always, it's kind of cool to wear your helmet back in your head. So the kid falls off the bike, and that point severs the spinal cord. We have hundreds of children every year paralyzed because of their damn bike helmets, because we've created, and you can't nerf the world, but we've created a false sense of invincibility with the bicycle helmets. I won't be hurt if I wear my bicycle helmet. No, you could end up paralyzed though. The vaccine is going to give people a false sense of security. It doesn't work more than 25 to 45% of the time to begin with. And it's going to make people think that they're bulletproof when it isn't. Also, this is the very first vaccine. It's the fastest a vaccine has ever been rushed into production. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I'm with the president. I think the problem is that the insurance company bean counters have forced doctors to start giving low of vaccines at one time rather than spread them out over several visits, because the insurance company bean counters don't want to pay for those separate visits. Nope, you just get 3 mega shots. Well, a little child's body cannot handle 3 mega shots. So vaccines are good. The dosing is what I have a problem with. So I am not an anti-vaxxer. I want to make that clear before I tell your audience what I'm going to tell them next. I won't be taking this because this is the first time the vaccine has ever been out of the box. Like it or not, I'm going to let other people be the guinea pigs on this one, because again, 25 to 45% maximum effectiveness for the flu. This virus is burning itself out. I don't need to be vaccinated against it right now. And I'm not going to subject my body to any potentially bad side effects from the vaccine.
Very interesting. Let me ask you this. Since we're both 58 years old, I've had many colds. Every year I get a cold. I've never had the flu, and I don't get the flu shot. Have you ever had the flu?
Yes. I got the flu 3 days after I got the flu shot in 1995, and I will never have a flu shot again. And people tell me, oh, that must be in your head because it's like, guess what? I never get the flu. I will get a head cold every now and again. The only time I've had the flu in the last 40 years has been 1995, and it was 3 days after I got the flu shot. I know they say that they've changed it since then. It used to be live virus, and now it's not, and I don't care. I don't care. Yeah. I don't need a flu shot. I'm not in the high-risk population.
Yeah. We used to get it in the military. When I first went in, it was mandatory. It was just part of the shots that you got. and then eventually it got to where, you didn't have to have it unless you wanted it. But I do remember that everybody that got it always ended up sick afterwards, with bad cold, runny nose, all that kind of stuff. They felt like crap for a few days.
Yeah, because it works by stimulating your immune response. It works by making you sick and getting your body up to speed, making antibodies.
Yeah. Timothy, thank you so much, brother. This has been a very interesting chat. Your knowledge is wonderful with this. Where can people find you that want to reach out to you and ask you any questions?
My YouTube channel is Patriot Uprising TV. They can always go to my Patriot Uprising page on Facebook. Just search for @Patriot Uprising, and just leave me. I don't take messages on that, but on a post, you can just ask me any questions on the post.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thank you so much. What's that?
Thanks for having me on. It was fun. It was a fun chat.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate it so much, brother. Hey, be safe out there and wash your hands, okay?
Always.